What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios for another week of building Coruscant in LEGO. I have a very big potential breakthrough to share with you guys in regards to the Senate building. I've been working on trying to create that round bowl-like shape towards the top of the Senate building, and I think I've finally figured out the right technique to do that. I also have a Clone Trooper update for you guys showing you what I've decaled recently and how many I have left to do. Over the weekend, I had a huge mindset shift in regards to the bank. I went from not really being a fan of it to loving it, all with one change. But enough talk. Don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button and let's get started. I have a backlog of decaled clones I need to assemble this week. They're sealed and the hips are all carved. All I need to do is shave off a bit of the arm opening on the torso and assemble them. I do this so that the arms can fit into the socket smoother because normally it's very tight and I don't want to damage any of the decals trying to force the arm into the socket. It's a fine line though, because if I shave too much off, the arm gets loose and becomes floppy and pretty much useless at that point. I'm getting close to having all the clones I need decaled. I only need 3 more shocks and 6 more grunts for a total of 35 of each. So that means probably about 3 more decaling sessions. All of these turned out really good, only minor scratches and scuffs, which I just chalk up to battle damage. Over the weekend, I got a lot of work done on the bank. Unfortunately, I got a little overzealous and wasn't paying attention when I started this sidewall, and I built a lot of it with light bluish gray brick. But as you guys remember, most of this wall is supposed to be dark bluish gray, with only a small frame of light bluish gray around the edges. So I have to tear it all out and rebuild this wall. And to make matters worse, it's very interconnected with the smaller wall in the front, so I have to take apart a large part of that section as well. But now I'm back on track and should be smooth sailing after this. In order to connect the outer wall of plate to the inner wall of brick, I'm adding bracket bricks to the wall at random spots. This will help keep the plate upright and prevent it from bowing outward and creating gaps between the two walls. I might as well go all in on the bank this week and remove the tree and add in the large pillar that will hopefully hold up the roof. I'm feeling a little wary of adding this because I feel like the giant pillar might throw off the layout of the lobby and make it harder to see details further inside the bank. I don't think there's a section of Coruscant that's had as intense of a glow up as this bank. I mean, look how good it looks. And all I did was just add in these front walls, but it just looks so much more grand and imposing and finished. It looks like it belongs in Coruscant now, which is awesome because honestly, for a while, I wasn't really sold on the idea of this bank. I kind of just threw it in because I had to. But I'm actually really starting to enjoy working on it now, and I'm really excited to add the lights in and see what everything looks like when it's finished. The main thing I want to talk about is this little design on the front. I didn't need anything specific right here. I just needed something to break up the wall of light bluish gray. And I figured some kind of oval or, diamond pattern design would look good. I basically just created a roundish shape with slopes and inverted slopes, and then used those same slopes on the inside in dark bluish gray to create this egg looking thing. I did have 2 shields in the middle right here, but someone suggested using a Republic logo instead, which I thought was a great idea. Now it's time for some pillar talk. I was initially wary of adding this pillar into the bank because I was worried it would just throw off the whole layout and make it harder to see inside because, once the pillar is this tall and the roof's in, the only way you're going to be able to see this design is if you come to like one of the sides and then kind of, bend down a little bit. And then the main entrance will also be covered up from certain angles as well as one of the statues, but there just wasn't really any other option, because this was easy. I have all those pillars of bricks in there, but I can't do that here because, there's an actual interior. So I needed something that was both practical and aesthetic. And I think this is my best bet. And honestly, now that it's in, I really like it. And I feel like it meshes with the rest of the build very nicely and definitely looks like it belongs there. But unfortunately, this guy no longer has a home. So if you have any idea where a small bonsai tree would look cool in the mock, let me know down below in the comments. There is one thing I do need to adjust with this front wall, and that is adding some kind of a frame around this door. It just looks weird just having the glass right next to the wall. It looks more like a window and less like a door. So I think I'm going to put a dark bluish gray row of tile around that to create somewhat of a frame and just make it look more like a doorway. Now, for what I was most excited to show you guys, the breakthrough I made with the Senate building. So one thing I've been thinking about for quite some time now, and what I addressed in last week's update is how am I going to get that kind of mushroom or ballooning shape here towards the top of the Senate building. And I thought about trying some inverted slopes like this. The only problem is there's no way to be able to continue this slope across this curve as well, because if I were to put those slopes, on these flat parts, those flat parts would slope out, but then you'd have these sections where the cylinders are where there'd just be these big gaps. And so eventually I ruled out different things and realized I think the only way to be able to get an angle that slopes out and curves is to use wedge plates, basically like this. So very happy that I was finally able to figure that out. This is obviously not the finished form. This looks pretty bad, but what I'm trying to do right now is figure out what wedge plates are going to create the right angle, how big did each of these sections need to be. I toyed with multiple different kinds of wedge plates. I tried these 3x6s. I even tried these massive ones, and all of the angles on this side were too steep. So what would happen is, you can see the more of these that you put together, it starts to curve this way, and I need something that can curve this way but not go down. And so I needed something super shallow, and I ended up using basically the shallowest wedge plate LEGO makes, and it's this 3x12 or 3x10, whatever it is, and it works pretty good. I am still having some issues with the sections starting to curve downward over time. So that's actually why I flipped this side upside down, because it starts curving down here and then you get to this side and it curves up, but it does kind of create this squiggly line like that. So I don't know if I'm going to end up going with this exact design. Another thing that I think will help with the curve down is making each of these panels wider. That way they cover up more space and I can cover more distance with the same amount of panels, which means that'll kind of negate that downward curve, if that makes sense. This is really tough to explain. This is kind of, a little bit more on the technical side, so hopefully you guys are following along, and I'm also not the best at explaining my techniques. And this curve is going to be the hardest part, because this flat part I can just create one solid panel, put it at an angle, and then run it the whole width of the building. So now that I've kind of explained the concept or the techniques that I'm going to be using, let's take a look at how exactly all of this is possible. And it's just a mess of ball joints. And then down here at the bottom, I have these hinge plates to help create that outward sloping angle, and then the ball joints kind of help everything wrap around and hug this curve as close as possible. Whenever I'm designing for something the first time, I basically just try and get the right shapes and build that I'm looking for, and then once I have everything figured out, I go back through and redesign and rebuild everything in a much cleaner, more efficient manner. So that's actually what I'm going to do next. The only reason I kept this all together is so that I could kind of explain what's going on and my building process so far, and to help you guys visualize what's going to be going on with the Senate building. So now what I'm going to do is take the panels off and make them wider like I was talking about earlier. But before I do that, I need pieces. Got a bunch of ball joints in for the Senate building. This is all going to be pretty much all Senate building focused. I got some more of those hinge bricks to help with the angle, and then a bunch of light bluish gray brick in here. This package is pretty much all dark bluish gray, so I can continue working on the main structure of the Senate building, because this plated section is actually going to be higher up. I just wanted to start building it now so I could figure out where the pillars are going to be and order in the parts I need to actually build this curve when the time comes. I'm really hopeful of these wider panels. I think it will help minimize the downward slope the panels create when all connected together, and that's all I need. Even if there's still a little bit of a slope at the top, these panels will be covered up by the roof, which will slant down over the top of them, so when it's finished you won't even notice any curve. I really hope this whole idea works out, because I cannot think of another way to create the same shapes, and if it doesn't work, I may have to resort to just having the Senate building walls run straight up into the roof without sloping outward, which just won't look as good. Well, let me tell you, this next part did not go as smoothly as planned. I thought I would just simply reapply the now wider panels back in their original spots, but the added width now meant the ball joints and hinges were all in the wrong spots, so after about a third time of trying to connect everything together, this happened.
What have I done?
It's funny. I spent the first 9 months of this mock thinking and kind of talking about how easy it was, how simple and smooth everything was coming together, unlike Utapau and Kato Nemordia, which both gave me some major problems. And then we hit this section. You guys remember the problems I had with the stairs. I built it wrong, built the plateaus at the wrong height, trying to figure out the whole shape and dimensions of the Senate building, and now we get to this. So it's almost like Coruscant heard what I was saying and just decided to dump as much as it could on me right here at the end. But that's just how it goes sometimes. I was finally able to get these wider panels in place. It took me so long, and I basically had to rebuild everything back here from the ground up. But I think that ultimately ended up being a good thing, because you can see everything back here is much cleaner and more organized, and so I've got a much better idea of how everything needs to fit together. As far as the spacing goes, the wider panels did allow me to move further this way without going down too far. You can see there's a little bit of a dip there, but we'll talk about that in a second. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to run the whole way, and so I had to flip these last two panels upside down to kind of compensate for that dip. I don't know, guys. I like this look. I like this design. I can't really think of a better option, but there are things about it that really bother me. One of them is down here at the bottom. You can see these panels just don't line up with each other super well. They're kind of off, a little tilted, a little, you get these little jagged points, and I just don't like that. It just doesn't really make it feel like it's all part of a building. It's all part of one building. It's almost like there's two levels or something like that. It just makes it look a little bit more disjointed, you know what I mean? If you look at it from standing up like this and from a distance, you can't really tell. But if you get up close, then you start to see the problems a little bit bigger. Luckily, it's only the bottom side I have to work on because this whole top is going to be covered up. Pretend this is the roof. I'm planning on having it come down at an angle like that so you can see, you're not even going to see this entire top of all of the panels. It'll be nice and covered up. So really the only thing I have to worry about is down here. And I think maybe, as I take more time messing with the ball joints and trying to adjust things, I can get a much more uniform line down here on the bottom. I'm hoping this is one of those situations where the more the build progresses, the better it looks. It may look kind of disjointed and clunky right now, but maybe once I get the roof on, get more of the wall done, and just get more of this section built and have it run the whole way across the mock, the whole thing will look better, kind of like what happened with the bank. But I'm really curious to know what you guys think of this design so far. Don't forget to let me know down below in the comments. And here are the decaled minifigs that I did at the beginning of the update. They are ready to go, ready for action. Moving on to the road, that's pretty much the only other thing I worked on after the last progress update. I'm to this point where the damaged section of the road is going to be from the gunship. So it's basically going to come down like this, smash into the road right here, and just churn and break everything up till it runs into the wall. So we're going to have a huge section right here that basically looks like that. In fact, I'm probably going to have to take out a little bit of this because, it's probably going to hit right here. So that chunk will need to be removed, and then I can put in this battle damage section over there. To wind down this week, I'm going to finish the open area between the Senate building steps and entertainment complex. Real easy stuff that doesn't break as soon as you touch it. I've also been thinking about the tunnel between the two steps. I have a giant statue that I could set in that open space. I also had a suggestion to put some flags there, kind of like what we see in this reference photo. Let me know in the comments which of these options you like more. I finally remembered to add headlight bricks into the snot brick section so I can place down minifigs. I need to do that in the other area and road as well, because if I have all the minifigs just standing around on the mock not connected to any studs, it's going to be a nightmare of an earthquake if the table gets bumped too hard. The longer I've looked at it, the more the upper section of the Senate building is really starting to grow on me. I think, like I said earlier, as I continue to work on it, it's one of those things that's not gonna really look super great until it's more complete. But now that I have the angle and how far that upper section is going to jet out, I can now lay out and start building the pillars. But next week, I have a monumental task that needs to be carried out. I'm not 100% sure that I'm gonna do it next update, so I don't wanna say what it is, but next week could be pretty crazy or just a normal update. You'll have to tune in and see. All that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about this update down below in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. But until then, happy building.